The wind that night cut through the city like a blade, sharp and unforgiving. Snow drifted across the empty park paths, settling on frozen benches and dim streetlights that flickered weakly against the darkness. It was the kind of cold that crept into your bones and refused to leave. No one in their right mind would be outside in weather like that. Yet beneath the pale glow of a lamp near the center of the park, a young woman sat trembling on a wooden bench, her thin coat wrapped tightly around two small children who were curled against her sides. Their tiny faces were pale, their breaths turning into small clouds in the freezing air. The woman's fingers shook as she held her phone, staring at the cracked screen as if the device held the power to save them. She typed the same desperate message again and again, sending it to anyone whose number she still had. A simple plea for help. A silent cry into the dark. Before we continue this story, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of compassion, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who believes in hope, and subscribe to the channel. Also tell us in the comments where you are watching from. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts all around the world. Across the street, a sleek black car rolled slowly past the park gates. Inside sat a man whose life seemed to exist in a completely different world from the cold misery outside. Alexander Kingston was one of the wealthiest men in the city, a self-made billionaire whose name appeared in magazines, business journals, and charity galas. His empire stretched across real estate, technology, and international investments. People admired his intelligence, feared his influence, and envied the life he lived in penthouses and private jets. Yet for all the luxury surrounding him, Alexander carried a quiet emptiness that even money could not silence. That night, he had left a high-profile business dinner early, his mind heavy with thoughts he could not quite name. The driver slowed as they approached the traffic light beside the park, the tires crunching softly on frozen pavement. Alexander's gaze wandered absent-mindedly toward the benches beyond the iron fence. He was not expecting to see anything unusual, certainly not something that would make his heart stop beating for a moment. At first, it was only a silhouette beneath the streetlight, a woman sitting with two small children. That alone was strange enough in weather like this, but as the car idled at the red light, the wind lifted the woman's hair, revealing her face for just a brief second. Alexander leaned forward suddenly, his breath catching in his throat. The world outside the car seemed to blur, because the woman on that bench was someone he had once loved more deeply than he had ever loved anything else in his life. Her name was Isabella Hartwell, and the two children beside her looked almost exactly like him. Alexander's heart pounded with a strange mixture of disbelief, confusion, and something dangerously close to fear. For a moment he wondered if the cold night air had somehow created an illusion, a cruel trick played by his own memory. But the longer he stared, the clearer it became. It was truly her. 7 years had passed since he had last seen Isabella. 7 years since their love had shattered. Back then, Alexander had not yet been the untouchable billionaire the world knew today. He had been a young entrepreneur with big dreams and relentless ambition, working endless hours to build a company that many people believed would fail. During those difficult early years, Isabella had been the one person who believed in him completely. She had supported him when he had nothing but a tiny apartment, a laptop, and a dream that seemed impossible. Their love had been intense, passionate, and real. But success has a way of changing people, and when Alexander's first company suddenly exploded into a global success, his world transformed overnight. Investors demanded his attention, business partners surrounded him, and the pressure of maintaining his growing empire slowly began to suffocate the simplicity of their relationship. Rumors, misunderstandings, and cruel lies whispered by jealous competitors eventually created a storm between them. One terrible argument changed everything. Words were said that could never be taken back, and Isabella disappeared from his life. Alexander had searched for her at first, but his expanding responsibilities eventually swallowed him. Time passed. The world moved forward, and the memory of Isabella became a quiet ache buried deep inside his heart. Yet now she was sitting on a frozen bench in the middle of the night, looking exhausted, frightened, and heartbreakingly fragile. and beside her were two children who looked no older than 6. The traffic light turned green, but Alexander did not move. Something inside him refused to let the moment pass. Without thinking, he ordered the driver to stop the car. The wind struck his face the moment he stepped outside, but he barely noticed the cold as he walked toward the park. Each step felt unreal, as if he were moving through a dream that might vanish if he blinked too quickly. Isabella was staring down at her phone again, typing another message with shaking hands, when she sensed someone approaching. Slowly, she looked up. For a second, her eyes widened in disbelief. The silence between them stretched like a fragile thread. Years of memories rushed through Alexander's mind as he looked at her. She looked thinner than he remembered, and the confidence she once carried had been replaced by exhaustion. But her eyes were still the same. Deep, warm, and filled with emotions she had always tried to hide. The children stirred beside her, shivering slightly in their sleep. Alexander's gaze shifted toward them, and something inside his chest tightened painfully. They had his dark hair, his eyes, his face. 1,000 questions raced through his mind, but none of them seemed to matter as much as the simple truth standing before him. The woman he had loved was freezing in a park with 2 children who might very well be his, and she was asking strangers for shelter. The realization struck him like a storm. Alexander Kingston owned dozens of luxury properties across the city. Entire apartment buildings belonged to him. Hotels carried his name. He had spent millions on charity galas meant to help the homeless. Yet the one person who had once believed in him more than anyone else had been sitting outside in the cold, begging for help through text messages. A deep sense of guilt settled over him like a shadow. In that moment, Alexander understood something painfully simple. Success meant nothing if it had cost him the people who mattered most. He gently removed his coat and wrapped it around Isabella's shoulders before she could protest. The warmth of the fabric seemed to surprise her, but the exhaustion in her eyes suggested she no longer had the strength to argue. Alexander then knelt beside the 2 sleeping children, studying their faces carefully. One of them stirred slightly and opened his eyes, revealing the same dark gaze Alexander had seen in the mirror his entire life. The boy looked confused but not frightened, and in that small, quiet moment, Alexander felt something inside his heart change forever. The journey that followed was not simple. Years of pain and misunderstandings could not disappear overnight. Isabella had her own wounds, her own struggles, and secrets she had carried alone for far too long. Life had not been kind to her after she left. The father of her children had never been part of their lives. Financial struggles, unstable housing, and endless sacrifices had shaped the past 6 years of her world. But Alexander refused to walk away again. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to slow down and truly listen. He learned about the nights Isabella had worked multiple jobs just to afford food, the apartments they had been forced to leave behind, the moments she had nearly given up hope entirely. And he also learned the truth that shook him deeply. The twins had been born months after she left him, and she had never told him because she believed he had moved on with his powerful new life. That revelation changed everything. Alexander Kingston had spent years building an empire worth billions, but the most important part of his life had been missing all along. 2 children who shared his blood. A woman who had once believed in him when the world had not, and a second chance that fate had delivered on the coldest night of the year. Months later, the same park bench still stood beneath the streetlight, but the story it held had changed. The twins now laughed as they ran across the snowy grass, while Alexander and Isabella watched from a nearby path. Healing takes time. Trust rebuilds slowly. But sometimes the universe gives people another opportunity to find the happiness they once lost. And this time, Alexander Kingston knew he would never let it slip away. Before the story ends, I have a small request for you. If you believe people deserve second chances, and that love can find its way back even after years of separation, please write the word hope in the comments. It helps this story reach more hearts. As the sun began to set that evening, painting the sky with warm golden light, Alexander watched his children laugh freely, without fear or cold. Isabella stood beside him, her smile soft but genuine in a way he had not seen in years. For the first time in a long time, his life felt complete. and he realized that the greatest fortune he had ever gained was not the billions in his bank account. It was the family he almost lost. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who needs a reminder that kindness still exists in this world, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories like this. Your support truly means everything.